Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Zay Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Hello, everyone. Zay Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. Hope you're doing well. We got a little extra music there, I think. A little extra tune. Yeah, look at that. Having a little bit of fun here on the show, Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com as I get rid of the voice in my ear. There we go. It was a technical issue on my end. We are clear now. We are good to go here. 12 o'clock Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. We rock and roll on the show here. I'm with you Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Fridays. Justin Fensterman, as you're well aware, hosts on Wednesdays because he was here yesterday. We're doing kind of a hybrid show at this point of the calendar. Justin obviously talks a lot of basketball when he's on here, but we try to talk football most days. We're obviously leaning into baseball. Today, we'll lead with baseball, and we'll throw the plan up on the screen here in a second. We'll lead with baseball, and then we'll also do some football because, you know, we got Tyler Buecher, and he's a great mind, and we'll bring him on in about a half an hour to talk some football this week. So here's kind of what we're doing on the show today. You'll see it there on the screen. And if I say see it on the screen and you wonder what I'm talking about, because you normally go to FantasyGuru.com, you click that Elite Plus tab at the top of the page to listen to the podcast, or because you type in Fantasy Sports Daily to your podcast network, you can also watch the show. On Twitter X, at Fantasy Guru site, you can watch live and leave comments that we will see during the show. At Facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ, you can leave comments and questions and thoughts that we can see and address during the show. If you go to youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork, same thing. Leave those comments and questions. We will see them and we can address them throughout the show. So that's why you can also see me in my face. And when we have Tyler on in a bit here, you can see him. And I don't know, sometimes we open up packs of cards. We've been doing that a little bit lately and, you know, have some fun here and there. So, you know, check us out. Podcast version, video version, live, on demand, whatever it is, we got you covered at FantasyGuru.com. Today, we're going to do, as we continue kind of our intro to the baseball season, what happened in 2024. I got a link there on the screen to the actual article. What I did was I took the ADP from last March of 2024, so a little 14 months ago. And what was the ADP that final month before the season began, and how did the players do? So I've got a chart. We'll talk about that for about 25 or so minutes. We'll talk a little bit about the draft guide itself. I'll mention kind of the particulars with that here in a second. Then Tyler Buecher is going to join us to talk football. Tyler's always on Thursdays, about a half an hour into the show, so about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, right around there. We're going to talk about David Montgomery returning this week for the Lions. Is Zay Flowers going to play this week? What the hell is happening to Cooper Kupp? What about the Washington Commanders run game? Where did that go? What's going to happen long-term with Sam Darnold, with Jordan Love? Deontay Johnson released again. I wonder if there's any positive there with Tyler Buecher with him. Who's going to be the quarterback for the Steelers? What is George Pickens doing? And then Baker Mayfield in 2025. So we'll talk about all these topics with Tyler Buecher of FG. Remember, you can go to FantasyGuru.com right now. You can click on the subscribe tab in the top right corner of the page, and you can get access to the Fantasy Baseball Draft Guide. The Fantasy Baseball Draft Guide is live. It's up. It's being updated on a daily basis, as I've said on the show here many times. Not official. Don't hold me to it 100%. But we're basically posting an article every day until the season begins. We've been going on that path here, and I think we're going to continue doing that. So basically a new article every day. It's been rankings week here at FantasyGuru.com. We posted dynasty rankings, points league rankings, category rankings for hitters, category rankings for pitchers. We'll have rankings over the weekend, which is basically a bunch of top 10 lists. We've got dependability grades, speed grades, power grades, all this stuff coming out at FantasyGuru.com. So that's in addition to obviously the mixed league, AL, NL only rankings, and all three of those mixed league, NL only, AL only. All three of those have auction values too. So we are chock full of rankings over at FantasyGuru.com. Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. You can get the all-in package, which is all three, meaning the seasonal baseball, the DFS baseball, and the betting baseball. You can get all three. If you only want two of them, you can send a note to support@FantasyGuru.com, support@FantasyGuru.com, and say, hey, look, I'd like two of those three packages. What can you do for me? And it's most likely to be Ted Schuster answering, and Ted will probably say, well, this is what we can do for you. So send a note to support@FantasyGuru.com if you want to mix and match a little bit. Don't forget, when you click that subscribe tab, you can sign up for any of the products for any of the sports at fantasyguru.com, support at fantasyguru.com. Okay. Hello, there's me. Let's put that on there. Let's make it a little smaller. In that product is something that we strive to improve. By the way, as you're well aware, I assume, you get access to Discord if you sign up. So if you sign up for seasonal baseball, you get the seasonal baseball room. If you sign up for the DFS baseball, you get the DFS baseball room, the wagering baseball, the wagering room. So we have Discord rooms for all the different sports and the different seasonal DFS versions, betting versions there as well. So you can check that out at fantasyguru.com. Okay, so let's look back at 2024. There's a series of articles over at fantasyguru.com in the draft guide. And remember, finally, last sales pitch, the draft guide is season long. It's not just for the first 2 or 3 months before the season begins. It's all season long throughout the playoffs. I've got an article, What Went Right in 2024. Look at all these things I did well. Look at all these calls I made that were the best. There we go. We got an article about that. We've got an article, What Went Wrong in 2024. What did I miss? Why did I miss it? And then we've also got a look back at the 2024 ADP from the NFBC for the month of March, as I mentioned earlier today. And I said this yesterday on the Elite Sports Show. I'll be back tomorrow on the Elite Sports Show, by the way, with Ted Schuster. We'll preview, it's going to be heavy football. We'll preview the weekend. We'll talk betting. We'll talk DFS, Core 4, the whole thing. So look for that, 3 to 6 Eastern tomorrow on Fantasy Sports Radio, Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Today, there will be no show. Unfortunately, Justin Fenchman had some personal things he was dealing with today. I have a couple of things I got to do today. So the football diehards will be on 3 to 6. It's a one-off. The diehards is on today, 3 to 6. Ted and I will be back tomorrow to do the Core 4 and all of that for the weekend for football, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. And then Jeff Mans, who's dealing with that personal family situation right now. I'm sure he'll address that on the show. He's expected to return on Monday. So no show today. Fantasy football diehards will be on today. Ted and I will be back on 3 to 6 tomorrow. Jeff hopefully be back on Monday, 3 to 6 Eastern on Elite Sports. We've mentioned this. I mentioned this on the show yesterday, kind of looking back and trying to prepare yourself for looking forward. And the fact that now is a good time of baseball, as we've did on the show this week, is kind of we're prepping, right? And as we move forward and get closer to the start of the season, we'll start talking more about players, spring training will start, et cetera, et cetera. I wanted to go back and look at the fact that, and I directly mentioned this on the show yesterday, the fact that the number one player in fantasy football, according to everyone, but us, we had Jamar Chase number one. Everyone but us was Christian McCaffrey. Bombed. The must-get universal number one pick in baseball, Ronald Acuna. Did he bomb? I mean, he got hurt. So I don't know if it's Gross McCaffrey got hurt. So he bombed too. He played 49 games. Okay. And by the way, this is what you would see if you look at the article. I'll throw it up on the screen there. It's kind of hard to see because of the size there. Maybe I'll make myself a little smaller just for a second. Let's see if I can figure that out. There we go. So we've got the rank where they finished, according to Player Rater, and then a brief little comment. We have this for all the top 50 guys. And as you can see there, Ronald Acuna at the top played 49 games. The fact is that what the universe says, what the general opinion says, is not always right. And again, we saw this directly the last 12 months with the number one pick in baseball failing to match expectations. Look, he barely finished inside the top 300. And Christian McCaffrey, I don't know where he finished, but he stunk too. Just because everyone says to do A doesn't mean you can't do B. Now, we're not taking a pitcher in the first round in baseball. We're not taking a reliever or a starter. We're not taking a catcher. Like, there's certain things you shouldn't do. But that doesn't mean that you have to follow ADP. And in fact, we talked about this earlier in the week, the right way to draft, tiering the players up. We've got all these rankings at fantasyguru.com. I've always encouraged people, and I've in fact said this on broadcasts on Sirius XM many times, we're not great at predicting success. There'll be an article that hasn't posted yet. Let me see if I can pull that up. An article where I review the history of the first round, and it's not good. It is not good. The history of the first round in fantasy baseball. When does that article go up? First week of February. No one's drafting now, so okay. First week of February will go up, and it'll review with data points, with names and performance results, the fact that we suck at predicting the first round. So it's not a shock to see. And when I say we, I mean the fantasy space. ADP, my rankings at times do that. CBS, Yahoo, ESPN, whoever's ranked. as a whole universe, we just aren't very good at predicting it. Why? Most of the time it's because of injury. Sometimes, obviously, there's ups and downs in player performance. The 25 home run guy hits 20, and while he's supposed to steal 15 bases, he steals 11. And we thought he'd hit 280, and he hit 267. These things happen, but we're just not very good at it. And if you look there at the top of the list, I've got the top 7 guys on the screen there. How many of those guys finished? These are all top 7, right? How many of those guys finished in the top 10? One. It was Bobby Witt. It's only one. So only one of the top 7 was remotely close to his ADP. Corbin Carroll was 19th. That's pretty close. But look at those other numbers. Tatis was 97th. Kyle Tucker was 101. Mookie Betts was 43. Julio Rodriguez was 45. And Acuna, who we mentioned earlier, was 286. Those are the best of the best. Right? So remember that when you're looking at these players and you're trying to judge, ADP says this, and I got to take this guy because he's such a value in ADP, or maybe I have to reassess my rankings because the ADP. Just because popular sentiment is A doesn't mean that A is going to happen. It just doesn't. And it was directly pointed out for us last year with, again, only one of the top 7 guys, only one of the top 7 in the top 15 overall, and only 2 of them in the top 40. That's not good. That means only 2 of the top 7 players were even, if you're in a 12-team league, a 4th-round pick? Think about that. Let's talk about a couple of the guys in particular. I got Ronald Acuna at the top there. Bobby Witt was fantastic. I want to talk about a couple of the guys there, Julio Rodriguez and Corbin Carroll. Let's start out with Corbin Carroll. Corbin Carroll was, as you can see there, finished top 20 after all the struggles and all the concerns about his shoulder and the lack of power in the first half. And, oh my gosh, he's going to have this horrendous season. He was a top 20 fantasy performer last year, was Corbin Carroll. And I think it's rather remarkable, and I said this yesterday on the show, and I'll repeat it here today. Corbin Carroll did not live up to expectations. He lost home runs. He lost 20 steals. He lost 50 points in batting average. He still went 20-35 with 120 runs. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say. But when a guy goes 20-35 and scores 120 runs, and that's his down season, he mentioned all along that it was his shoulder. It wasn't his shoulder, excuse me, that it was a mechanical issue that he felt was the reason he wasn't driving the baseball. And it sure looked that way in the second half. There was all the concern about his shoulder. He wasn't driving the baseball. In the end, he only finished 3 home runs short. His isolated power mark was down about 25 points, but that's okay. The slugging percentage was way down, but barrel rate was pretty much the same. Hard hit rate was pretty much the same. Exit velocity is pretty much the same. Launch angle was pretty much the same. There's a lot of similarity here with him last year. He is so dynamic that even when he's not good, he's still top 20. The batting average should rebound. Let's call him a 270 hitter this year. 20 home runs, 35, 40 steals. Like if Corbin Carroll is your number 1, I think you're doing okay. Julio Rodriguez is another guy who, burst on the scene, went 25-25 as a rookie. Then he went 30-30 in year 2. And the hope was that in year 3, he'd at least go 30-30, if not maybe 40-40. In the end, he went 20-20. So he still was productive. He still hit 273, which was only a handful of points below his batting average the previous 2 years. His on-base percentage was only down about 10 points. Look, his batting average down about 5 points. His on-base percentage down about 10. And he went 20-20. Much like Corbin Carroll, this really feels like it's as bad as it's going to get. And when you go 20-20 and you hit 275, it's okay. When you go 15-13 and hit 238, that's not okay, right? So keep this in mind with Julio Rodriguez. If you look at his current ADP, if you look at the NFBC's ADP right now, let's pull it up right now. No one is buying the struggles last year with Julio Rodriguez to the point where they're out on Julio Rodriguez. His ADP was top 5 last year, as you can see there on the screen. This year, in the early voting, he's 7th, in the early drafting, he's 7th in the outfield with a 13.3 ADP overall. By the way, I'm seeing here, power outage right now. There's power down right in my neighborhood. I got a note from the PG&E company saying that, oh my gosh. So if the power goes out here, I apologize. beyond my control. We're totally fine. We haven't had any issues this morning, but just put it out there. We just got a alert on the phone that PG&E is warning that there's power outages. Don't know why, because it's 55 degrees, sunny, and there is probably 2 miles an hour wind right now as I look out the window. So I don't know what the hell's going on there. But anyway, we'll go back to Julio Rodriguez. Julio Rodriguez, in my mind, is an excellent selection this season. If you're looking to draft Julio Rodriguez, I got no problem with that whatsoever. Next guy up there, number 6, if we drop down a little bit further, Kyle Tucker, who's just outside the top 100. He was just outside the top 100. He only played half a season. I mean, he had a 993 OPS, power speed. He goes to Chicago to play for the Cubs. If you missed that, yes, he's a Cub now. There are days where the offense is going to flow in Chicago. There's days where it won't. Depends on the weather. We all know that. But Tucker submitted that figure, was it $17 million? The Cubs were $15 million for the arbitration. So they're trying to figure out the contract and all that. But the bottom line is Kyle Tucker is going to be expected to hit 30 home runs and steal 20 bases again. And with health, he should be a tremendous offensive force. That shin issue that I mentioned 50 times last year on shows. For those of you with me last year, you remember. Yeah, there we go with Kyle Tucker. It should be much better this season. Fernando Tatis, still hasn't played 145 games in a season. And that's really interesting because Tatis had all the promise when he came up. Then he had the concerns about his health in year 2. Then in year 3, he only played 130 games. Then in year 4, he played 141 games. Last year, he played 102 games. He had 20 home runs and 11 steals and hit 276. He is a really good fantasy performer, period. All right? There's no debating. I could say whatever I want. We could break down skills and talk about, this being a little down or this, whatever. The bottom line is the dude is a monster in the counting categories and he steals bases. Problem is he's never played 145 games, and last year was 102. I mean, his ADP is better than Julio Rodriguez at 10th. That's tough. That can you take a guy in the first or second round? And I'm asking you because I struggle with that. Can you take a guy in the first or second round that you have to bake in 20 to 30 missed games? I'm taking Julio Rodriguez over Fernando Tatis every time. Like that's what I'm doing. I don't know what you're doing. That's what I'm doing. So anyway, Julio Rodriguez, thumbs up. Fernando Tatis, kind of, somewhere there in the middle. Rolling down this list a little bit further, Juan Soto was 5th overall in performance. He was 9th on this list. Shohei Ohtani, obviously Shohei Ohtani was number 1. Didn't even pitch, and he was still number 1. Shohei Ohtani was absolutely spectacular. Let me put that up on the screen while we're talking. Trey Turner had a little bit of a struggle, but still was 35th overall. Aaron Judge was 2nd overall. He came in at 15th. Bryce Harper was 22nd. Bryce Harper was better than you thought. Kind of under the radar. He's drafted 16th according to ADP. Came across at 22. They went 30, 85, 85, and 285. Like Bryce Harper is just there all the time. Limited to 110 games was Austin Riley. That dropped his ADP from 17th on draft day to a result of 134th. He was good, but he only played 110 games. He should rebound just with health. He's a mash or two for that Braves team that we all love. I see Angela mentioning I'd take Elly De La Cruz over Julio Rodriguez. Elly De La Cruz last year was way better than Julio Rodriguez. He had 259. He went 25-65. The problem with De La Cruz is what we saw last season. Their time, well, even with Rodriguez, there's streakiness with both of these guys. I think the answer might come down to who do you take? Come down to do you have 5 outfielders or 3 that you're starting in a 10-team league, a 15-team league? Like, what's the context there? De La Cruz is a good bet to have more steals. I think you can make an argument that Rodriguez is a good bet to lead him in the other 4 categories. So, if Elly De La Cruz is stealing 70 and Julio Rodriguez is stealing 30, that's a huge difference. And you can give up 8 home runs and 30 points in batting average for that, right? I was higher on Elly De La Cruz, I think, than almost everyone last year because there were all the people that were worried about him getting demoted to the minors because of his approach. The things I've been talking about for years, approach and putting the ball in play and all that I've said has been paramount of importance that people seemingly ignored for a long time. Suddenly last year became a thing, and everyone was focused on Elly De La Cruz. And, it's not like no one liked Ellie De Cruz's ADP in March was 18th. But I seem to be more boisterous and supportive. If you remember, if you're with us last year at fantasyguru.com, he's a cover boy of our draft guide. Hey, there's Bobby Witt this year. Rafael Devers was consistent last year until the last couple of weeks when his shoulder really started barking. They had to shut him down early. He was 19th overall. He ended up at 36th. So he was still productive, and you'll take that. Remember, we were talking about guys like Kyle Tucker, dropping 80-plus points from or 80 spots from their ADP to their actual performance. In the case of Devers, he went from 19 to 36. We'll take that. Ozzie Albies fell all the way to 119th in production. He only played 97 games before injury happened. And that's a concern. And Justin Fensterman, who I was hosting with the last couple of days on the Elite Sports Show, again, remember, Ted and I will be back tomorrow on the show Friday. He brought up, Justin did a couple of times, the fact that, are you concerned that Ozzie Albies has missed time with injury? And it's like, well, I think you have to be concerned about that. I think you have to be concerned about it, not from a performance perspective, because he's really good. Not from a team scenario, because it's a great situation in Atlanta. But for me, and maybe this isn't fair, because, Jose Altuve has blown this out the water. But Ozzie Albies is 5'8", 165 pounds. Like, that's a little guy. And I always wonder a little bit about what that means long term. Now, there were, for 100 years in baseball, that was the size of the average player, and these guys were playing 140, 50, 60 games. So, not like Phil Rizzuto was Mr. Monster or anything like that. But I always worry a little bit about that. But I think bottom line is there's been some unfortunate scenarios with Ozzie Albies. I love Ozzie Albies in that skill set, power, speed, run production, and that Braves lineup. Sign me up. Francisco Lindor went 30-30 for those people that missed it, even though he had that back issue late in the year that caused him some issues in the playoffs. The reports are all positive that he should be fine. So looking for another strong effort for Francisco Lindor, whose only real fault is his batting average. He had 270 last year, and that kind of seems to be the top end. I don't think anyone's going to look askance at a 30-30 season if he's hitting 258 anyway. So, but he plays every day. He's uber consistent in terms of the totality of his performance. Last season was a little up and down, week to week, month to month with Lindor. But at the end, same old Francisco Lindor, and he's a hell of a ball player. Pete Alonso, 30, 90, 90, basically. He was in the top 25 in ADP, finished in the top 40 in terms of production. A little bit, the 34 home runs, people were kind of hoping for 44. But he is what he is. He's obviously still looking for that team. Sounds like they're making some progress, he and the Mets, toward an extension. A 3-year contract is what we're hearing, with some opt-outs. We'll see if that comes to fruition there with Alonso returning to the Mets. Michael Harris last year struggled because of health. He only played 108 games, much like Ozzie Albies, only about 10, 11 games apart were those two guys. Harris still had 16 home runs and 10 steals in 108 games, but he was really good at the end of the season. And I think he's finally emerged for the Braves outside of being stuck in the bottom third of the batting order. I think they finally are committed to having him higher up in the order. With that, I'm a big fan of Michael Harris. Marcus Semien went from 24th in ADP down to outside the top 50. He was still very productive. He still went 20-15, still had 100 runs scored, but the batting average, it was in the 230s, and I think the counting category numbers in terms of power, 23 home runs, 74 berries are good numbers. They're not great. I would look at Semien and think that a repeat of last season is totally doable for him. And that Rangers lineup, as we've talked about briefly here on the show, that Rangers lineup could be really good this year. So that's something to think about with him. Teammate Corey Seager was 25th in ADP. He finished just outside the top 50 as well. 30 home runs for a third straight year last year for Corey Seager. He had 30 home runs the last 2 years, and he didn't play 125 games in either year, if I'm not mistaken. Corey Seager can mash. The only thing he doesn't do is run. He can mash. Hard, though, to take a guy with full confidence when you have to take him, given the fact that he's missing a month of games here the last couple of seasons. Vladimir Guerrero improved upon his ADP with that massive second-half finish. He'll look to be the number one first baseman, on a lot of people's boards this season. One or two, I think, probably pretty much everyone. Got that $29 million to avoid arbitration. And we'll look to sign a long-term contract with the Blue Jays. Maybe they want to sign him. Whether or not he wants to sign him back or not, we'll see. Gunnar Henderson was next up. Gunnar Henderson went almost 40-20. Almost scored 120 runs. Dude's a banger. He's going to be an elite play this season, obviously. Next up is Luis Robert at 28. Now, he's a really interesting guy. 184th overall at the end of the season. Still with the White Sox. The White Sox still suck. Robert's coming off a season of just 100 games played. The OPS, 657. 35 RBIs. Robert's a really tough guy to figure out because Robert could go 30-30. He's a tremendous talent. He could be a top 5 AL or NL MVP vote getter. And notice I said NL because there's still the chance that the White Sox trade him. If I'm Luis Robert, unless I love Chicago, why would you want to be there on that team? That team sucks. You don't want to be there. And, the White Sox, they have Robert now, but by the time they have to pay Robert, $30 million a year, are they going to be ready to compete? I don't know. So Robert still could get traded. Lots of volatility there with all the strikeouts, the batting average all over the place. And you have to worry about his counting category numbers in an offense that's frankly just not good. Adolis Garcia, speaking of the Rangers, he went from 30th to about 32nd in ADP to about 75th in the player rater. He went 25-10, drove in 85 runs, but he hit 224. I look at what Garcia did last season, and I'm really willing to give him a little bit of a mulligan. It's not great. Not great. But I think he can hit 250 with 30 home runs and drive in 90. We've seen it before. Still double-digit bases. We saw that last season. I think Adolis Garcia, he's going to be on a lot of solid teams this season, Adolis Garcia. 34th in ADP was Royce Lewis at 216, and he's a tremendous question mark. And I had a question. Someone asked me on Twitter X at the Ray Flowers. Ray, I'd love to hear you talk about Royce Lewis. It came in yesterday. Let's talk about Royce Lewis. Royce Lewis, who Kyle Elfrink and I on Sirius XM interviewed 2019, 2020. We interviewed him as one of the up-and-coming star prospects. We used to do a prospect show every year at midseason. And because we interviewed him, he must be a great guy. Tremendous talent. The fact is that Royce Lewis was looked at by a lot of people as a little bit of a question mark, given the fact he was taken first overall, because people thought there were other more talented guys, but the Twins loved his skill set and his makeup. He was still a top 10 guy. It's just a little surprised he went number 1 overall. Beyond that, routinely a top 10 overall prospect in baseball coming up through the minor leagues. Some places obviously even had a higher than that, maybe 5th. But injuries were a thing. And as he approached and started his major league career, injuries were a huge issue. So he bursts on the scene in 2022, plays 12 games, hits 300, hits a couple of home runs. People get excited. 2023 comes along, injuries and all that. But in 58 games, 15 home runs, 52 RBIs, and hit 309. So his first 60 games in the majors, 60, dude had almost 60 RBIs, had 17 home runs, and was hitting 300. Right? Last year, what happened? Injuries again. Injury. He only played 82 games. Batting average tanked. It fell to 233. Because of the injuries, he didn't steal a single base. It's the guy that was anticipated to threaten 2020 on a consistent basis. Maybe it was 25-15. But we're now 152 games into his big league career, which is basically a season. He's got 6 steals. And because of the constant lower body injuries with Royce Lewis, can you even predict 10 steals at this point? I don't think it's smart to do that. Could he steal 10 bases? Yeah. Could he steal 15 or 20? Yeah, absolutely. He could. Can you expect it or count on it? No, you can't. Again, I'm 5 to 10 steals would be where I'd hope for him. So really a very minor contributor in a category that he was expected to be a more significant contributor in. It's hard when you're a young player, and he's only 25. 25. He's only 25. It's hard when you're a young player and you only have 152 games of experience, which again is a full campaign. By the way, 268, 33 home runs, 104 RBIs. When you're a young player and you've had so many injuries, it's really tough to get a handle on who you are and where you're at in your development. Because every year this guy's been dealing with injuries. He's missed developmental time. Now he's at the big league level. There's questions about where he's going to play defensively. He plays third base, but are they going to move him around? There's all these questions. Second base, what are they going to stick him at DH more? They don't want to do that because they have other DH guys, DH preferred guys with the Twins, I guess is the better way to say it. But Lewis might pick up second base eligibility. That's been floated around here. Who is Lewis? If we look at the skill set, the walk rate is basically league average. The strikeout rate is basically league average. We can live with that. Not great, but we can live with that. He didn't drive the baseball last season. Well, that's a big issue. Now, he posted a batting average of balls in play his first 2 years about 340. Last year, it was 250. I don't think either one of those is legit. What's his career number? 295. almost dead on the big league average. Okay, that makes sense. Last year, though, if you look at the batted ball data, he had his lowest expected batting average in the 3 seasons, his lowest expected slugging percentage in the 3 seasons, and his expected WOBA was 1 point higher than his rookie season. So basically the same, but it was 30 plus points below where it was in 2023. He lost over 3 miles an hour in exit velocity, which is catastrophic. His maximum exit velocity on any batted ball he had was 2.5 miles an hour below where it was each of the previous 2 years. So he didn't have a single ball that he hit anywhere close to what he had done the previous 2 seasons. His launch angle was unchanged. His barrel rate was unchanged, but his hard hit rate was down. So what basically happened, and I think a lot of this has to do with health. He wasn't fully healthy when he was playing a lot. When he hit the ball on the screws, he was pretty much the same guy. He just didn't hit it on the screws as often. Now the barrel rate, when he lined it up, he socked the crap out of it. But on a consistent basis, it just wasn't. His hard hit rate was down and his exit velocity was down. And because his launch angle remained unchanged, this wasn't like all of a sudden he's hitting a bunch of lazy fly balls. It was still at 17%, which is it was 16% the year before. So adding that all up with Royce Lewis before we talk to Tyler Buecher and have a little fun doing some football here. If we look at Royce Lewis, again, I'm predicting 5 or 8 steals. I think given everything that we have seen, let's call him a 250, 260 hitter. So way below what he said he'd had the first 2 seasons. I think it's fair with health to say this guy could hit 30 home runs and go 80-80. So basically, a best case scenario, in my opinion, for Royce Lewis is pretty much what Pete Alonso did last year. That's kind of a best case scenario. Now, that is not to say that he doesn't go 2020 this year. That is still possible, and that's not possible for Pete Alonso, obviously. So there's still that talent to dream on. He's still just 25 years old. But at the end, for me, the fact about when do we draft Lewis and how do we feel confident with Lewis, and is Lewis the guy we're building around and all those kind of things, I just can't get there because of the health issues. I just can't. He's on the second tier of rankings over at fantasyguru.com at third base. I am comfortable with him there because you look at the other guys on that tier and it's like Mark Vientos and Jake Berger and Matt Chapman. I'm comfortable with him in that range. But there is significant risk, so make sure if you're drafting Lewis, you understand the baseline, and you consider maybe your corner infield guy or having a backup, a bench player that's also third base eligible because Lewis has not proven that he can stay in the lineup on a consistent basis. So there we go. So that's a breakdown of him. Remember, you can go to fantasyguru.com. You can click on that 2024 season in review tab and get the whole top 50 guys in ADP. I have a comment on all of them, where they finished in the rankings last season. Remember, you can always go to the website as well. Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner to rock and roll with us. Get any of our products, including the baseball product. Remember here that the draft guide itself, there's a homepage. You can find it on the homepage if you go to fantasyguru.com. Look for the little blue square. You'll see it. Kind of scroll down a little bit. You'll see it. Also, though, if you go to fantasyguru.com/2025-MLB-draft-guide. fantasyguru.com/2025-MLB-draft-guide. If you go there, you can find the homepage. And that's updated on a daily basis. So you'll never have to say, Ray, I missed an article. Ray, I didn't know there was an article. Hey, I missed it. Did you write about this? Bookmark that page. You're good to go. I think that we're starting to get a little bit more traction in the Discord room, too, as people start to get a little more into this. I heard someone say, yesterday it was great to hear you talking baseball on SiriusXM. Baseball will start to talk, as a universe, SiriusXM will start talking more baseball. Jeff, I don't know what Jeff's going to do. I'm sure he'll talk baseball. He's talking basketball on the show. And I assume he'll do that when he comes back next week. But each week as football starts to decline in the number of games, interest doesn't necessarily go down because we're getting closer to the Super Bowl, of course. But, it's time to start cranking things up with baseball. And, we'll make the switch. When we make the switch, we'll see. I think you're seeing it right now. We spent the first half of the show talking baseball. We'll continue to make this switch. And I don't think we'll ever truly go away from football on the show. I don't think we're going to do that until the season is completely over. But, we'll wind things down. We'll still have Tyler Buecher on. We'll still have Armando Marcel on. We'll have Russell Clay. So we'll still have – don't worry if you're a football fan. We'll still have football here. All right? Don't worry about that. But also don't be concerned if you're a baseball fan, because we're going to talk baseball every day here on the show. All right. It's about halfway into the show now. We still got all these football games to look into this weekend. We have some broad picture questions I wanted to ask as we kind of do a final recap and review of the 2024 season as well. Every Thursday, we visit with Tyler Buecher of fantasyguru.com. You can find him doing the DFS live stream on Friday nights. You can find him Tuesday nights doing the live stream, the coaching breakdown. What's it called? I'll have to ask my. I'm forgetting what the name of the thing is on that. They do every. Let's bring him in right now before I butcher it. Tyler Buecher, fantasyguru.com. How you doing, Tyler?
Doing good, Ray. We're working with some technical difficulties here. I'm not sure if my USB drives are working. Can you hear me?
I can hear you and see you. So
we're good.
Okay, we're good. All right, we're working. What is the live stream on Tuesday called? Like I'm drew a blank.
We call it the roster coach.
Roster coach. That's it. Jeez.
Yes. And eventually, late in the summer, we do a bunch of best ball drafts, and we affectionately rename it the drafters coach.
Okay, there you go. That's Tyler Buecher, fantasyguru.com. Yeah, Tyler, everything looks good. Sounds good. I think you got it fixed. So good. I was mentioning earlier, there's a chance there's huge blackouts or power outages in my neighborhood area. I don't know why. It's 55 sunny and there's no wind. But the power company sent me a note saying, hey, watch out. So we might lose this whole show. We have no idea. So let's talk while we can. Okay. Tyler's on with us every Thursday here on the show. You can find him at FG, as I noted. He's on Tuesday nights on the live stream. He does the DFS work. He's also one of our lead guys in wagering over at fantasyguru.com. So one-stop shop with Tyler. I wanted to look a little bit at this weekend and also look at some of the big picture things. Tyler, by the way, will be on with us with Ted and I tomorrow on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. So we'll dive in more directly to the matchups this weekend with Tyler on SiriusXM tomorrow. Return to David Montgomery. What's the takeaway from that? He's good. He scores touchdowns. He's going to help the team. Is there a huge impact for the Lions? I mean, the Lions seem to be rolling, scoring 30 points every week. Jahmyr Gibbs is blowing up. They're at home. Everyone's expecting him to win. David Montgomery, 8 to 10 touches, and kind of they slow play him in, or you think it's here 15 touches and let's go, David?
I think they go back to what had worked pretty much all season long. We may see a little bit of a limited amount of volume for him, but I would be shocked if it's anything less than 40%. We saw there were 11 games where the two backs played together. He and Gibbs played in full. In those matchups, we saw Montgomery out-carry Gibbs. We saw Montgomery out-touch him in the red zone as well. Like, there's a reason why they're bringing him back, and there's a reason why they didn't really shut him down and put him on IR. They thought the knee injury was very short-lived, and it's proven to be that. He's practiced in full since Tuesday. FanDuel really botched this one for anyone playing daily fantasy. He is priced at $4,000 at the minimum. So he is a start your lineup kind of guy with this week here. Good matchup against Washington. They're 27th in EPA per rush, 29th in rush yards allowed, top 5 in rushing touchdowns allowed to opposing backs. And that's the key stat for David Montgomery, rushing touchdowns. I expect him to get into the paint here in a game with a 55.5 point game total.
Yeah, since he's joined the Lions, he's averaging more than a touchdown a game at home. So that's been his thing. So he's returning, and obviously that's a huge boost to a high-powered offense. The game of the week, I think, according to me and I think everyone else, is the Bills and the Ravens, Tyler. And in that game, we have Zay Flowers, who didn't play last time out. He's got the knee issue, didn't practice yesterday. Is he going to? We're not getting a lot of we feel good he's going to play kind of things this week. Now we know the Ravens don't necessarily throw a ton of passes to the wideout anyway. Rashad Bateman, I guess, becomes the number one, though Bateman's not anywhere close to being the same type of guy schematically to Zay Flowers. Talk to us about what the loss of Zay Flowers would mean to the Ravens offense, and does it make you concerned against the Bills if he's not out there, or the Ravens will figure it out?
Yeah, this is going to be a really fun game. Temperature is supposed to be in the low teens, possible snow. Looks like a really fun matchup for the Sunday Night Hammer. Zay Flowers missed the wild card game after logging that injury in Week 18. DNP is to start the week, so it's not looking good, like you said. I think there's a chance we don't see him this week. As such, I'm really expecting Baltimore to lean on the run game. They've really got things started off on the right foot. Last time they played the Bills, Week 4, began the very first play from scrimmage. Derrick Henry runs for an 87-yard score. Don't think that's going to happen again, but I do think it's still a matchup you want to attack on the ground. The Buffalo Bills were a really weak run defense to start the year. They've gotten healthier as the season progressed. They've gotten better with their linebackers whenever they've both been healthy, namely Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard. When these guys are in the lineup, they do a lot better defending the run. But this is still a team, the Baltimore Ravens, who are bottom 5 in pass rate over expectation. They want to run the ball. Neutral game scripts, this team is one of the most run-heavy squads. I think we'll just see the targets without Zay Flowers really be spread out. Tight ends, wide receivers, running backs. I mean, we saw random players like Anthony Miller getting catches last week. Didn't even know he was with the team until he got 3 catches. Right. His absence is definitely notable, sure, Zay Flowers. But again, I'm anticipating this game plan for the Ravens to center around the run, given the Buffalo's shortcomings defending it, given the cold temperatures, and given how dynamic this team is. I would imagine we see a lot of jumbo packages with like a sixth offensive lineman, some Charlie Kohler out there, some extra tight ends. Yeah, that's what I'm envisioning, though. It's going to be one of those types of games, and it'll be in Buffalo's ball court to try to slow things down, which is really interesting from an X's and O's matchup because this team plays a lot of zone. They play a lot of too high. The way to beat Lamar is with man and with blitzing, and that's not the Bills' forte. Like, they'll have to really do like a full 180 on what we've come to see from them all 18, 19 weeks so far to really slow down this offense. I think this is going to be the best game of the week.
Tyler Beaker, fantasyguru.com. Again, he'll join us tomorrow on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio to break things down further for the playoff weekend. What the hell happened to Cooper Kupp?
Good question.
I've been asking people. No one's. Tyler? What the hell happened to Cooper Kupp?
Yeah, he's out there on the field. He's just not getting any kind of involvement at all. Less than 30 yards in 5 of his last 6 games. The last time we saw him do anything of note was against the Bills, and that 60-70 point shootout. The last time he faced this Eagles defense, who they'll be playing this weekend, he had a season low average depth of target of just 4.6 yards. So this is a defense that's not really a good matchup at all for him or for Stafford. They play a lot of zone. They play a lot of cover 4. They don't blitz. We talked about the blitz with the being good against the Lamar. The Eagles blitzed one single time last week. They're a team that runs with their front 4. They're really content in doing that. They're number 2 in PFF's pass rush grade because of just getting there with 4. They're doing really well with the guys up front. Slot cornerback Cooper DeJean is also going to be a really tough matchup for Cooper Kupp in the slot. He's already a star in my eyes. Since week 8, the Eagles have limited slot receivers to the 4th fewest receiving yards per game. And we have to remember that this team buried the Rams last time they faced each other. It was 37-17 at one point. So I think they're going to build a lead here. Saquon Barkley sets up really well matchup-wise. I think we're going to see – he had 300 yards from scrimmage the last time these two squads faced off. So I think we're going to see the Eagles rush out to an early lead and then just sit on their really good defense. That allows, with just 4 guys rushing, they can sit back in zone. We saw Matthew Stafford attempt just 2 passes of 20-plus air yards last time. It was all dinks and dunks and underneath stuff. Well, the 4.7 ADOT for Kupp. Ooh. We saw Puka Nacua have like 65 of his 100 yards were yak, where he had to really create things after the catch because he wasn't able to get anything going vertically. It's just a tough matchup for the Rams here. I think the Eagles run away with this one, and I think Kupp is once again a question mark where we enter the offseason and we start doing fantasy rankings for 2025, and we're like, what the heck do we do with this guy? Because is it age? Is it productivity? Does Stafford come back? Like, there's a lot of questions for the Rams entering 2025.
Absolutely. Tyler Beaker, fantasyguru.com. I got another question for you for this weekend. Lions and Commanders, everyone's expecting the Lions to win. Conventional thinking, obviously, is the Commanders, they're going to have to score 30 points, right? They're going to have to move the ball. They're going to have to throw the ball. What the hell's happened to their the rushing attack with the Commanders? Like, it's gone. Other than Jaden Daniels doing his thing, like, I don't think Brian Robinson's broken a tackle in a month. Like, it's just not. And what has happened to the rushing attack? And does it matter? Like, even if they want to use it this weekend, are they going to get the opportunity to, or are they just going to have to throw the ball because the Lions aren't going to be stopped?
I think we've seen Brian Robinson either break down due to volume in terms of the amount of carries he's seen this year, or he's just kind of banged up and not really relaying that to the coaches, or they're keeping it hush-hush. You mentioned his lack of explosiveness. I had a stat in last week's game script article about how he's like the second worst in yards after contact per attempt over the last, 8 or 10 weeks. Yeah. He's just not creating production, ripping off big gains. Now we have Eckler. They were almost in a near 50-50 split in snaps last week. And the Lions defense is a pretty stout run defense. They brought back Anzalone in week 18. Thought that was huge for them in terms of personnel. This is a team that also plays a lot of man defense, the Detroit Lions, which historically is tough for receiving backs, where we want to target defenses that play zone with receiving backs because these guys, their first steps are generally taking a step backwards, allowing space for these running backs to catch balls underneath. Eckler is likely to get some involvement. We saw Brian Robinson also get involved in the pass game last week. Rushing-wise, though, I think we see Detroit jump out to a quick lead and it almost become non-existent. I'm really contemplating some Brian Robinson rushing unders or rush attempt unders. Question is, I think those bars are already pretty low and have been bet into smithereens. There's only 4 games going on. All these lines are already cooked.
Right. Tyler Beaker, fantasyguru.com. Going from the running attack to the passing attack. I want to ask about a couple quarterback situations. Sam Darnold went out with the whimper. We talked about this earlier in the week, and I said, here's the pro Sam Darnold case. He was 5th in the league in passing yards. He was 5th in the league in touchdowns, and his team went 14-3. Normally, you do that, and people say you're going to the Hall of Fame. Sam Darnold does that, has 2 down games at the end of the season. People want to get him the hell out of there. We've heard reports suggesting that he's looking for or likely to get a contract in the Geno Smith-ish, 3-year, $80 million-ish zone, something like that. Who is Sam Darnold moving forward? Is he back with Minnesota? And if he is back with Minnesota, is he only a starter for half the season until J.J. McCarthy is good? Is it they sign him to be the backup and they just overpay him? Like, talk to us. This is a wild situation. This guy's going to get MVP votes, and he may be on a different team next year.
Yeah, he'll definitely get some comeback player of the year votes. He'll get some. He's already on the Pro Bowl. Yep. What a disastrous finish to the season. And life really comes at you fast when you look at the Week 17 celebration in the locker room.
Right.
Man, I don't know. I think it's fair to question, like, we have a large sample size of him failing with multiple organizations. He finally does well here with an offense that wants to pass the ball heavily and has superstars in terms of round 1 receivers, round 1 tight ends. Like, this is as good of a situation he could have walked into. The offensive line injuries finally started piling up at the end and kind of became exploitable. We saw the Lions really give the blueprint in terms of how to disrupt this team, and the Rams just absolutely capitalized it with 9 sacks last week. I don't know what happens to him. I think he goes elsewhere. I think that they are content with J.J. McCarthy. This team has $70 million in cap space. That's the 6th most in the league. When I look at what we saw this past year with the Vikings in terms of what they were able to do with a guy like Darnold, I think you try to go with that vision of what we can build on from that, with inserting McCarthy in here, knowing what we have from him tape-wise and everything, what we've seen in practice, and try to build around his strengths and get the squad ready to rock, to bring it back with another run at the NFC North. Shore up your weaknesses, shore up the losses due to impending free agency, like offensive tackle, offensive guard for sure, quarterback, defensive line. There's a lot of turnover there. I really like the Minnesota's general manager. He's done a really good job and is highly regarded in my eyes. Eager to see what he does this offseason. As far as like a prediction for where I think Darnold lands, I truly think it's anywhere. It's open-ended. I think Pittsburgh would make a lot of sense if they are done with the Fields Wilson combination of what they try to go with. Maybe they bring in a new offensive coordinator that has some ties to Darnold in Pittsburgh. I think Arthur Smith's been interviewing around as of late. I'm trying to keep track of those coaching changes, but man, I don't understand why they don't do this stuff wait until the Super Bowl. There are teams preparing for matchups this Saturday, this Sunday, that have to put everything on pause, go fly to some team, and then present their life goal, life ambition in front of these guys for 3 to 4 hours, and then go fly back and then prepare for a game. I digress. I think
that's a wild. I wouldn't want my employees doing that. If they're on my team, I wouldn't want. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think Darnold's a fun offseason conversation that will be something we talk about when free agency hits. I think he does leave Minnesota, though.
You mentioned the Steelers. Let's talk about them a little bit more, Tyler. There's been a growing sentiment. I don't know if you've seen it. We've talked about it on the Elite Sports Show. I've seen it on social media. Steelers fans are done with Mike Tomlin. I don't know if they're done with them, but they're not pro-Tomlin. And I like, look, you're not winning the Super Bowl every year. I get it. You're making the playoffs every year, and he's got tied for the longest streak of all time without a losing season. Like, there's a lot of teams in this league, Jets. There's a lot of teams in this league, Jaguars. They would love to win 9 football games in a season. Steelers do it every year. They don't want it. They want things to change. Well, if you want things to change with the Steelers, Justin Fields, to me, makes more sense to be your quarterback in week 1 next year than Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson is more of just the same, right? He's going to win you your 9 or 10 games. You're going to make the playoffs. And not saying that if Justin Fields is your quarterback, you're guaranteed to win 9 or 10 games and make the playoffs, but there's excitement there. There's a different level there. There's opportunity there. Either one of these guys going to be there, though? Are they going to go in a totally different direction with Sam Darnold or do something else?
I think Darnold's definitely in the mix. I think they could draft somebody as well. Problem is, they keep doing well where they're never in a position to draft a guy with like a top 10 selection.
Right.
Do you take your shots there and hope to get a Kenny Pickett repeat, maybe a round 2 hit, like a Dalton? I don't know. I think the veteran route is the best route. I agree with you where I think Wilson is more doing the same, and the definition of insanity, blah, blah, blah. Fields, though, like I think what struggled with Wilson was consistently being put in 3rd and longs. Mm-hmm. I think part of that had to do with play calling, and part of that had to do with Wilson's play as well. Right. Fields could offer a change and a reprieve from that, but until they get a signal caller there, this team is just really going to have a lot of question marks. I've been impressed with their building through the draft as of late in terms of getting some offensive linemen, also getting some guys via free agency. That, at least in terms of the outlook for Pittsburgh, in terms of a quick turnaround, should make Pittsburgh fans at least be someone in the positive bucket. Hopefully they find somebody that can do a little bit better than what we saw this past year, though.
Tyler Beaker, fantasyguru.com. Is George Pickens going to be part of that mix? I mean, for all the people that smash Tomlin and don't like Tomlin, okay, he dealt with a lunatic in Lev Bell. He dealt with a lunatic in Antonio Brown. He's dealing with a lunatic right now in George Pickens. They still win football games. Now, Pickens, I think, is a little different. Until full meltdown by the other two guys, they showed up every Sunday and performed. Pickens, I don't know, he's playing half the game, third of the game, 2/3 of the game. He's getting yelled at by his teammate. Like, this is a problem. The NFL is not a big trading league. I don't know what the appetite would be for other organizations to pay fully for George Pickens' skill set because of everything else. Pickens back with the Steelers. Is it more of the same? Could you aggressively draft Pickens? Could you aggressively make moves to add him in a dynasty or keeper league? Your thoughts on George Pickens?
I think he needs to take a note from A.J. Brown and pick up that Inner Excellence book and do a little reading here. Pickens is a fun conversation because I think he's very much a Rorschach receiver where you can see different things with him depending on who you ask and whether it's be a fantasy analyst, a fantasy player, or just a random person. There's a lot of upside for sure with Pickens, especially in the vertical game that we see it week in and week out. The head case stuff is nothing that we can really control on our end as a fantasy player. Mm-hmm. But I do think it also presents a buying window for people that are just kind of sick of it and being like, I don't want this. I don't want to do all this. I totally understand that sentiment. I don't really care when it comes to fantasy production if you're producing. So I would be willing to inquire in dynasty leagues about the value of Pickens, see if I can pick him up. He still has one more year in his contract, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe, yeah.
Okay. Right. So I don't envision him going anywhere. We'd have to see what kind of blend he would be with the new quarterback, new offensive system, new offensive coordinator, new quarterback coach, new quarterback, pardon me. I think his best days may lie as him operating as a number 2 with a veteran ahead of him that can, all right, bro, take a seat. I think a guy like Hopkins would be a good veteran addition to play alongside with him. I'm not sure he wants to or needs to, but I feel like that's my view take on Pickens. I talked about the Rorschach thing. I view him as a high upside player. I would like to acquire him where possible.
Tyler, we talked a lot about Sam Darnold, and you see Angelo here saying, I'd take Baker Mayfield over Sam Darnold. Yeah. You don't know because we don't know where Darnold's going to be, and so we can't specifically say in 2025 but Baker Mayfield in particular, I mean, obviously top of the mountain for him. There's no chance he's better. I think it's almost impossible to even create a scenario where he's as good again. He was fantastic this season. The selling opportunity with Baker Mayfield, am I wrong? Do you think what we saw this year is actually something he can repeat? Talk us through Baker Mayfield.
It's back-to-back pretty good seasons from Baker, and we could argue, I think there's still some more meat on the bone with Chris Godwin missing a huge chunk of the season, Evans missing a chunk of the season. Evans is getting up there for sure in age, but I think what we saw from Jalen McMillan was promising towards the end of the year. We saw some good outings from Cade Otton as well. The offensive line took a good step forward. I like the I'm losing his name. Graham Barton, I think, was their center that they picked up at the draft this year. Looked really good. I'm bullish on the Bucs. I think that this offense and this Liam Cohen system has worked really well for Baker. Clearly, he's like top 5 in multiple metrics, no matter how you dice it up. I would be interested in buying, and I think it's okay to buy a player at his, I don't want to say peak, but buying a player on the up and up, knowing that there's probably still more room for growth if, I don't know, if Godwin plays a full season, if Evans plays a full season, if the defense continues to be porous and force them to throw often. I still think there's a lot of meat on the bone with Baker in terms of his fantasy career and fantasy value. I still think there's some room for growth.
If he grows, are you then saying he hits 45 touchdowns? Are you saying statistical growth, or do you mean more growth overall and just kind of maintaining?
Probably more in the efficiency lens. There were a lot of interceptions. I think he could do a lot better in that regard in terms of growth.
Final quarterback to ask you about, if we roll back the clock 12 months, 7 months, 6 months, Jordan Love over Baker Mayfield with a bullet, according to everyone, I think. Now it's like, oh, Baker Mayfield, yee, Jordan Love, boo. It's like, is this it with Jordan Love? As the season wore on, it became very evident that the Packers were winning football games with Jordan Love being much more Daniel Jones than he was being Baker Mayfield. Like, they had him throwing it 27, 20 times a week. Now, the receiving core was never healthy for the Packers. I have said many times, it's great that you have 5 or 6 guys you can throw out there to catch passes, but successful teams usually don't. They've got some kind of hierarchy. They don't really have that. Their number one receiver seems to be their slot guy, and they don't have him on the field. Jaden Reed only plays 2/3 of snaps. So there's a lot of things going on here. Bottom line is the Packers win games, and that's what matters. But who is Jordan Love? Is he a quarterback one in the fantasy space, or did we have it wrong 7 months ago?
Yeah, I think anyone who's holding Love in Dynasty was left with a sour taste in their mouth with the way the season ended this past week. I mentioned Vic Fangio and how he blitzed one single time against Love. They just threw a ton of zone at him, 83%. And with them only with Eagles rushing 4 passers, those were small windows for Love to throw to. He entered that game without Christian Watson. He lost Romeo Doubs to a concussion mid-game. He lost Jaden Reed to a dislocated shoulder mid-game. The OL was banged up. Like, there's just a lot of things for me to say. I don't want to put how the season ended as the way we remember Love.
Right. Because
this was still a guy who throughout weeks 1 through 18, quarterback 9 in EPA per play. He was still playing pretty darn well. And this was a team that under Matt LaFleur ran the ball heavily. They were 32nd or 31st in pass rate over expectation. Them and the Eagles were flip-flopping back and forth week in week for who ran the ball more. And who could blame them? Josh Jacobs was playing phenomenal ball. Again, I think it's tough to evaluate Love because of the weapons haven't really been game elevators. We often see like a wide receiver 1 or a tight end 1 elevate a quarterback's game. And I think you said it pretty well where the distribution of targets, I came on the show multiple times saying nobody had a target share above 20% on the squad. It's just a bunch of guys in the 12 to 18% window. And that's really tough in terms of finding a guy to consistently go to. I don't know. I think of it this way. We saw incredible growth from the very start of 2023 to like mid-season of 2023. That was a pretty rough window. The back half of 2023, he got a lot better. In 2024, as a season, when you look at it from the whole lens, I think it was decent. How do we get this team better? I think investing in a wide receiver 1 is the path, but those don't grow on trees. You're going to have to draft one probably, and Green Bay making the postseason, not an early draft pick.
Well, get George Pickens. That'll solve everything, right?
There you go.
Tyler Beaker, FantasyGuru.com. As I've mentioned multiple times, Tyler will be on with Ted and I tomorrow, 3 to 6 Eastern on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio on the Elite Sports Show. He'll be on. We'll break things down directly for playoffs this weekend. What do you got going the next couple of days, Tyler? Still the same old kind of stuff, covering all the football?
Yep, football as usual. The content in terms of what's being posted has been very light, which has been amazing. I've been able to already finish my game script article. I had it done pretty much yesterday. So well ahead of the curve there. Got some props out for guys. So if you are part of our Fantasy Guru membership, I would highly recommend joining our Discord because I post those plays as soon as I bet them, which again, I've been posting and playing plays. It's Monday almost. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Now we're into Thursday. By the time I post my game script article on Friday, some of those lines are already stale. Some of those have been bet up considerably. So get in on our Discord if you're a betting member. I see a lot of people that DM me whenever I post a screenshot of a play. And they're like, what is this? What does this mean? Because they only see it from the website's point of view. Yeah. Joining the Discord is the best way to get some of the best answers. But really, my content is the game script column. That's about it for me. And then the show with you guys on Friday. Looking forward to that. That'll be a fun time.
Yeah, and by the way, when Tyler posts his bet, like it's like this long, I don't know, 300 words, 400 words. Like it's not like play this guy. Explains it. So that's what he's talking about over in Discord. Click the subscribe tab in the top right corner at fantasyguru.com to sign up for any of our products. If you want to sign up for the football season that's left, you can still do that too, right? You don't have to necessarily do the whole thing. Send a note to support@fantasyguru.com. Say, hey, I want to check out what you guys got for DFS and for the playoff leagues and for wagering the rest of the way. Support@fantasyguru.com. Maybe Ted can work out a deal for you there if that's something that interests you. Tyler, as always, great to visit with you today. Thanks for the info. We'll plan on doing it again in another week. And as we both have said, we'll talk to you tomorrow and have some deep dive into that game script article over on SiriusXM.
All right. Can't wait. Thanks, Ray.
You got it. He's Tyler Beaker. I'm Ray Flowers. We'll be back again here tomorrow, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Remember, the Elite Sports Show taking a hiatus for one day, but it will return tomorrow on Friday at 3 to 6 Eastern, and Jeff Mann should be back on Monday. For Tyler, I am Ray. Thanks for watching Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com.